Yeah,
So that'll be
I made my wife. No, she's right here actually.
yeah, all right.
She's
Before 16, before 16. Hello, kumusta? I was just reminding coach. All right, so we're going live now. Doc, go.
Hashtag Bangon Pilipinas. Blackwater would like to support our heroes of the front line who are risking their health and well-being to attend to COVID-19 patients. We aim to provide the frontliners of the Pasig City General Hospital hygiene kits which they can use daily. Blackwater, smell good, feel good. This webinar series is brought to you by Hoop Coaches International in cooperation with Blackwater. Smell good, feel good. This coaching webinar series would like to give special thanks to the following: Samahang Basketball ng Pilipinas Coaches Commission Head Coach Jong Yochiko, Basketball Coaches of the Philippines President Coach Louis Gonzalez, God Skills Head Coach Alan Ricardo, and frontliner Christopher Top Juliano.
All right. Good evening again, everyone, especially to our attendees. This is our second session for tonight, and we have a very special guest. But before that, I'd like, of course, to mention joining us again is our resident sports psychologist, Dr. Teddy Villasor. Good evening, Doc.
Good evening, Coach Royale. Good evening, Coach John.
All right, and my relationship with our guests started when, like with Coach Will Voigt, I attended one of their tryout camps or in Bakersfield back in 2012 or 11, either that. And I always see him during the summer league. So he was always going around and watching. It was before with the Bakersfield Jam, and now has moved on to the NBA with the Philadelphia 76ers. But we'll hear more on his journey from the D League, from a player to the G League or the D League, and then now coaching as an assistant coach for the Philadelphia 76ers in the NBA. And bonus, he's married to a Filipina. So that's something that we can all relate. Again, without further ado, presenting to you Coach John Bryant. Coach, good evening.
good evening. Good morning. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'd like to start with my wife. That's where I'd like to start every time.
All right.
It's not a bonus. I'm just showing. She's sitting right here. That's why I have to say that.
Pinay wife, Pinay. So Coach, but I know I gave a brief background, but what led you to being a coach? I know you played overseas. So how was your basketball journey?
Let's do this. If you don't mind, can I just go to this quick slideshow? I did my homework. And so, Doc and Coach, I know you guys always lead off with this question. And
okay.
So instead of you just
Good
looking
scout.
at my face, so I like to show pictures. It just has more impact and a little bit more powerful. So
cool.
Do that now.
We should mix it up a bit more now. We're all of our moves are.
Yeah, they scout us. They're very good scouts.
Yeah. Okay, so this is me, right? Coach John Bryant. I'm gonna be a little bit more loose and have fun, especially since I just woke up about half an hour ago. So you guys have been up all day. So, but here we go. So it always starts with my family. So I am nowhere without them, and I don't want to give you a whole backstory, but since you mentioned that my wife is Filipino, I had to throw her some love. And so here's my family on the left-hand side, and here underneath is my wife, Allison, my daughter, Vera, and my son, Miles. And so here we are in the middle. And then here are her parents to the right. And so this is Restituto and Melba. And so, Coach V, we were talking maybe last week about where my family is from in the Philippines and all of this. And so I mentioned that my dad is in Laguna, more specifically Santa Cruz, and that he went to De La Salle. And my mother-in-law is from Batangas, more specifically Santo Tomas. And how I've really immersed myself in the culture, just because I think it's important. We always joke about the getting my kids' passports, but I do think it's very important, just because there's a sense of self and sense of knowing where they're from. And so my mother-in-law only speaks Tagalog to them. And so we're trying to learn. I'm trying to learn. I've been trying to learn I've been with my wife for almost 20 years and it's still bad. And so
and any words that can come out?
I mean, I know salamat po, like when
All right,
someone's
okay.
so, like
That'll work.
And so como está acá, and then little small stuff and every food that I know. That's my words right there.
Yeah, well, we were talking about it. All right, give us some food for our attendees. I know it, but that's how Filipino you are. I was surprised. I was impressed, but tell them what you know.
Okay, so we just talking out. My wife Allison and I were talking about getting halo from somewhere yesterday. But my favorite foods are menudo, giniling, pancit. I talked about. What did I talk about? I should just run them off. Adobo.
Of course.
But there are foods that I don't eat like all the time. I had a list that I wrote down, but of course I don't have it right now. But I eat, and my mother-in-law is the best cook. And so, yeah.
Wow.
I'll stop bragging. Okay.
You might be an honorary Filipino with them. So we can bestow you that if you visit us and do a clinic here. We'll bestow you an honorary Filipino. We'll give you a key.
There we go.
All right.
I'll take a key.
All right. So yeah, I know. So
Okay.
how was your journey? You talked about family.
So here we go. So enough about that. But I started as a player. So I went to St. Joe's in Philadelphia. I'm from Virginia. Mike T, you guys had on in the beginning after Coach Will, Mike Taylor. I played for him in Germany.
All right.
And so I played for Coach Voigt in Vermont. This is the picture to the right, and this picture in the middle, Bakersfield. And so I probably played about 6 seasons before I hurt my back and became injured. And then Coach Voigt persuaded me somehow to become a coach. And so I got injured in the middle of my season in Bakersfield, and then I became a coach, kind of like a player coach. I don't know how he let me there. And so I started in the G League with Bakersfield and moved on to Delaware with kind of under our umbrella with the Sixers for 2 seasons. So I spent a total of 5 seasons in the G League, and I'm a huge advocate for the G League. I feel like every NBA coach that's a prerequisite. Like you need to kind of, cut your teeth a little bit, so to speak, in the G League, just because you have more opportunity to do everything. And then here I am. This is now my 4th season in the NBA with the 76ers. I've only been with one team, and I've been very fortunate to be under a tremendous coach and Coach Brett Brown. And I've been with him the entire time. And so I've seen everything, from the lows to now, kind of the highs and everything in between. And it's kind of helped shape my coaching trajectory, journey, whatever you want to call it. And then I've had the great fortune of coaching with my great friend and mentor, Will Voigt. I spoke about how he helped, get me into coaching and start coaching. And we had some success with Team Nigeria and now Angola in both the Rio Olympics and the World Cup last year in China. So that's kind of my coaching journey. I can just hop right into our discussion if you want and go from there, or you have more questions before we go.
Teddy will have some questions because of the journey. He loves stories about
I love it.
coaches. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Teddy.
Oh, we have two questions from our Q&A. Coach Ian's asking, Coach John, would you be open to working with the men's basketball national team of the Philippines?
So it's funny. You know, I do my homework. I'm a scout by nature, right? And so I watched Coach Voigt kind of as he answered the questions. Answer that question. The short answer, yes, absolutely. You know, this is where my family's from. It'd be an awesome opportunity. You know, I've never been to the Philippines. You know, we were fortunate enough to play against the national team last summer in China. But absolutely, you know, I think the only caveat is I can't do it without my guy, Coach Voigt. And so that's kind of where I would end it there.
Hopefully. We'll
I
see.
can speak. Yeah.
Thank you. There's another question, Doc.
Yeah, Ian's also curious. How's the situation in the city of Philadelphia? Have you guys started working out again with the players in the team's training facility? Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a tricky situation all over the world. We see. You know, I think it's one that we have to be careful with. But in regard to the question, we haven't yet. We haven't started training yet. I know there might be, I heard maybe 22 teams that started opening the gyms under really modified circumstances. I think only 4 players can be in the gym at a time. But we haven't. I think we're still a week or two away from opening our gym. Our state is still locked down, I think, until June 5th. And so we have an 8 p.m. curfew. I know, Coach, we were talking about that prior to the call. We have an 8 p.m. curfew here in New Jersey as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know how strict the law enforcement is in terms of, you know, kind of penalizing you, but I think people are off the roads for the most part.
All right. So, Coach, you spoke about like your coaching is what is your role is player development. So yeah, I'm leading you to your presentation about player development. So how does one start off as a player development coach, or how did you become a player development coach?
Luck. I don't know. Tall. You know, it's one of those things where very fortunate to be in right places at the right time, and automatically I kind of have this. I'm 6'8", or what would that be? 201, maybe 201. So right place, right time. I already have this presence, and so just because I'm tall, I have this athletic build, people automatically think I'm good at basketball. I wasn't very good. I just knew what my role was, and I was a good teammate, and so that can get you paid in a lot of respects. And so I was very fortunate. After I left Bakersfield, we moved on from Bakersfield, and I went to almost every camp. You talk about in the summers, in summer league, I was without a job, and so I made it a summer and a point to work every camp, every clinic, under the advice of Coach Voigt, just kind of get out there, because I only been coaching under him at the time. And so I got an opportunity to be with Delaware. And then after Delaware, as I was talking about before, Coach Brown offered me a position here just because I had working with our bigs in Delaware. And we lost a big player development coach prior to the season and my moving up. And so I spent 2 seasons as a player development, and now I'm an assistant in Philly. And so that was a long answer to say, I don't know how I got here, but I'm very fortunate to be here. I try to stay as humble as I can so I can stay working with as many great players as I can.
We're all blessed, Coach, to be coaching. So yeah,
We are.
Coach,
We are.
go ahead, Coach.
So what I'll be speaking about today a little bit, and let me preface it by saying I try to learn as much. And so I will say this again. I've watched your videos just to learn. And so there was already a piece on player development, specific, like a coach talking about specific drills and whatnot. I didn't want to go that direction because everyone has their own set of ideas and everyone has their own philosophy on how they want to teach. I want to teach, and Coach Voigt, I hope I don't reference him too much, but he's such a tremendous mentor of mine that, you know, he said in his session with you that you really want to talk about things you know and things you are kind of passionate and that you're kind of almost a master of. And to me, I want to pride myself on my ability to connect with our players and the relationships that I build with them. And so mine's leaning more towards that. And so I feel how I've been successful and how a coach can be successful, how I feel is through these three ways in player development. And there's a number of ways that you can do it, but it's relationships, building relationships, teaching and training, and then learning. And so I'll move on. So in regards to relationships, I feel the more you can create real organic relationships, not only with the players that you have that have to play our sport, but the staff that you have to be around every day, the better, right? And so I think it to me, I've benefited from being relational every day. And so it's funny, I was on a panel, not really a panel, but a Zoom call last night, and we were talking about post-COVID, right? And so, because I believe a big part of building relationship is the camaraderie and kind of the touch, you know, the touch factor, and you have to be around close proximity with one another in order to kind of build these relationships. And how do you do that post-COVID? And what's the new normal going to be after this? Because touch and proximity will change. And so something to think about that. Time is a big thing in the NBA. We don't have a lot of time. And so there's a game and there's another game. And there's limited practice time. And so I feel take time to invest time. And so what I mean by that is it takes time to get to know and, like I said, develop these relationships. And so, for example, texting. I during this kind of hiatus off of basketball, staying in touch with not only the staff, and stay connected with the rest of the coaches, and stay connected with players, former players. This is how you sustain those relationships. And I feel like that is another way of staying connected. One of the ways that I feel like I got better as a coach is coaches weren't afraid to tell the truth to me. So I feel that's I'm a big proponent of that, like telling the truth. Now you have to understand how your player reacts to the truth and time and place, just like time and score in any game. You know, you have to know when and how to tell the truth, but I think telling the truth. And like I said, none of this stuff is nothing. Coach, we talked about your 20 years in coaching. You know, none of this stuff is going to be like earth shattering, but I feel this is my success where I've kind of am building towards your 20 years. And so I like to always say, I don't know everything. And so, but this is where kind of how I've seen my journey. And so after I tell the truth, listen, people forget. And so people forget that they have ideas and thoughts too. And we have the smartest players, I think, some of the smartest players in the world. And so, and taking the time to listen to them means more to them than it may to you. Because sometimes as coaches, we feel that we know it all. And I'll tell them the truth that, hey, if I don't know it, we're going to figure it out together. And that sense of vulnerability with your player, I think, goes a long way. Align your intentions with their goals. And so players, I started with the creating the relationship piece early because I found that they won't listen to you if they don't trust you. And they won't trust you if they don't think that what you're doing is best for them and their career. And so you can't start telling them anything until I felt that you don't have a proper relationship with them. And so it's goal setting from the beginning of the year, from the off season or what have you. Goal setting with each player really helps them achieve their goals. And not only for them, for me as well. And so you'll see time management is another piece that I feel is huge in NBA. I'll get to that in a little bit, but immerse yourself in their journey. They have to feel that we're all a part of it. We're all a part of this journey together. And what I've seen is when they really see that you're along for the long haul and along for the ride, they want to take the ride with you. And then care. Like I was on another call, and this is kind of something I've kind of been and stood by my entire life from my mom. But like, if you treat people good, they will treat you better. And so simple acts of kindness. Our players aren't broke, right? And so, but it's the thought sometimes. And so I don't do things so they treat me better, but it's just, for example, I got for all of the players that on our team that had kids, I bought them books for their kids. Some dollar, whatever, very, very cheap book. And it's just a thought because I care about them as people first. They work harder for you on the back end. So just some of visuals are always fun to watch in these things. And so this during my time in the NBA, here are some players, not exclusive, but here are just a collage of players that I've worked with and had fun and who let me in and let me coach them. So I told you relationship was the first piece that I thought was important. The next I would think is training, teaching. And so prior to becoming a coach, I always wanted to be a teacher. And so in between when I was in college, when I left during the summers, I would always go back and teach in my hometown, call it grade school or all the way up to high school, substitute teach. And so I knew I wanted to teach in some capacity, and kind of Coach Voigt helped me channel this in the coaching. Well, don't you like basketball? Yeah. And so I think this was like a natural progression for me. And so telling the truth to me is always, I said this with the relationships, but with teaching, telling the truth. I can't, it's not always easy, but I think the coaches that told me the truth and were straight up with me were my favorite and best coaches and where I grew as a player. And so the next is creativity in your coaching. We have 82 games plus playoffs and preseason and pre-preseason September workouts. Workouts get stagnant and old very, very quick. And so how it works on most teams, I don't want to just speak for mine and other teams, but you usually are bucketed up with players prior to the season, who you work with for the whole season. Not exclusive, you can also work with the other players, but if you're with, say, 3 or 4 players for, let's call it 8 months of the year, it gets old very fast. And so how creative can you be coming up with new workouts? How creative can you be with delivering messages? And so one thing that helped me was the technology piece. And so I knew that guys got sick of my voice from time to time, that guys didn't want to joke some days. They're just like me. I mean, they don't always have it. And so I started to get creative with how I sent them video. I sent them through their phones. And so that let them coach themselves. And then I'd say, what did you see? And so, and it could be not only from the game, it could be from a practice, it can be from one of our workouts. And what did you see and what did you feel and how did you feel we got better? And so that's how I felt. That's kind of
Coach,
helped me.
Coach John,
Yeah,
how long are the videos that you send?
quick.
Quick,
3 clips.
three
And
clips.
so in each clip could be 7 seconds, 10 seconds. So max 30 to 45 seconds, nothing over a minute. Um, and,
Right.
and also what I've learned is players love watching themselves, right? So
Yeah.
uh, I've never met a player that didn't like watching themselves anywhere doing anything. And so you see that it's prevalent with the TikTok and Instagram and all this other things. And so how can you convey your message in a creative way that is relatable to our guys instead of just sitting next to them um, with your computer or sitting next to them and talking, which I think is truly important. But like I said, over the course of a very long season, in NBA or over international, it just takes a toll and it gets stale.
Coach,
Yeah,
yeah, you mentioned those. Is it while at like sometimes just a spur of the moment, like because from my personal experience, when I'm watching film and I see something, I just take a video of it and just send it to the player itself. So is that something that you also
yeah.
do?
So
That's
it's
the way you do it.
so we a lot of people use sports code, and
Oh
so
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'll just save a clip as a video
All
and
right,
then
all right.
drag it
More
through.
more high
But it's
tech
essentially
than
the
what
same
we
thing.
do.
Well, I should be. My degree in college was IT, and so I should know how to do this. But
uh,
it's funny. Our video guys always say that the higher in coaching you get, the
uh,
lower in technology you become. And so I'm just trying to stay
yeah,
even. And
yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm sure
I started with VHS, editing VHS.
I I'm so glad that I started coaching because I'm not sure I'd have the patience to rewind and click and all that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
uh,
I've learned. I was able
but I
to
tell you
learn
what,
how
cutting
to
teeth
repair.
that made you a better made you a better teacher and coach because you really had to pull the clip that you wanted, right? And so it was
Yeah,
such a process for you to do that. To think about,
yeah,
do I really want to do this? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
yeah,
so yeah,
to your point, yes,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely. It's
yeah.
the
It's
same
absolutely
thing.
like
If I see something, I'm
yeah,
sending it to
yeah,
them,
yeah.
and
Right
it doesn't
away.
matter what time.
All right,
It's
all
right
right,
away.
all right, all right. Thank you. So that's a good suggestion or learning point to our attendees that the players would appreciate those, even
Yeah,
if those are mistakes, right?
absolutely. And the
All
thing
right.
is, it's more important to coach those mistakes than there's a time and place for everything, I feel. And so on a game day, I'm not going to show them all these negative clips of themselves. And so why not do it on an
Mhm.
off day or prior to a game? Just because it's a learning process throughout the whole season.
All right. Thank you, coach.
Um, no problem. Time management. I alluded to this a little bit earlier. This was the hardest thing I've had to adjust to as a coach because as a player, you come in, you get your shots up, you do your workout, you do practice, and you go home and you're
That's it.
done, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
understanding how to manage my time was the hardest thing. And so I had to stay organized. And so I have a planner, I have a board on my wall here of all the things that I want to get accomplished that day and that week and that
Mhm.
month. And I'm not great at it. I'll be the first to tell you. My wife, I'm telling you, is the accountant. She takes care of everything. And so she helped me learn how to be more efficient with my time. And so time management with our players. And so we talked about how things can get stagnant with workouts. And so every coach wants to think they're going to solve the world's problems in one workout session, right? And so what I've learned is their attention span is about this long, this much. And so what I'll do is some days I'll say, hey, we're only going to do this and we're done. Let's get out of there. We're only going to shoot today. Some days I'll say, hey, let's put 30 minutes on the clock. Whatever we do, we're done. Right. And so I find that you kind of give your guys candy, so to speak, in terms of like they feel they're being rewarded with some of the things and the time that you spend with them, so it doesn't feel like, wow, our sessions have gone for an hour or whatever, and then players stop coming in and getting extra work in. And so managing the time with your guys has been huge for me, as well as my career, because on top of developing your players, you also have your work to do with your team. So there you go. Coach Townsend was on I think last week. I worked with JT for a season, 2 seasons in Philadelphia when he was our shooting coach, and he is the master of tracking. And so I kind of learned it from him, but actually Coach Voigt prior to that he always talked about, well, how you know you're getting better. And every workout, track your numbers, track your shooting numbers, track your free throw numbers, track whatever you worked in terms of, it could be pick and roll finishing through contact or whatever. How did you do yesterday versus today? And so I felt that that's another way for the guys that I coach or that I've trained or whatever, to let them know that you are truly invested in their journey, and they see that every day. And so to that, I've also learned that you have to know every player is not the same. And so into my next point, and everyone, coaches know, like, how do your player learn? You know, our game is more global than it ever has been. And I think last year had the most international players, and so on our team. And so I think I found it important to understand it. Someone's told me that I say, does that make sense too much when I coach? But I think I did it because we had so many international players. And so that I found myself saying, does that make sense? Do you understand? Because, and I preface it by saying, it's okay to say you don't understand what I'm saying. And I found that once I let my guard down and for them, that I was vulnerable, and they were like, yeah, can you say that again? Or I don't want to really understand. Can you walk me through it? Understanding your player's personality type, knowing what what player can take criticism at what point. That was huge for me. And so we all get kind of heated in the heat of the moment in game, and we think we can just attack guys, or knowing when and where and time and place to tell players, and criticism was vital for my relationship with them.
Coach John, I have a question. How are you able to identify the personality type of your players? Are they assessed at the beginning of the year? Is it something that you just gradually discover, having worked with them for a certain period of time? Thank you.
No problem. So, I don't have Dr. Coach John Bryant in front of my name, so I haven't. They aren't assessed. It's more of like feel and relational, and just understanding them and how I interact with them. And that's why, like, to me, it's important for me to understand them as a person before I understand them as a player. And so I've seen a lot of young coaches just jump right into, and they are the most educated, high basketball IQ coaches I've seen as young coaches. But I've made the mistake. I just will always point to, I've made the mistake as a first year NBA coach, thinking I knew what I was, and I was like, hey, you need to do it this way. And I had no relationship with that player. And I found that I had to create that relationship, like I said earlier, and then knowing how they learn, knowing how they take the information. I'm sure that's some teams do that, but we don't do that. But I just trial and error. In game, I tell them something. Whoa, okay, he snapped. I won't do that again. But like, you still have to convey the message. You still have to tell them the truth. You still have to hold them accountable. And so what are the ways you do that, and then how you do that is kind of up to you to learn, and what is in that message. And then so one kind of thing, I heard a coach say this, in game. He was writing a play, and he was always wondered why the player would get up off the bench and go behind him as he was writing a play. It's because the player said, I can't read the board that way. I read the board this way, right? Like usually you're in a huddle, you have your board, I had a board here, like up.
Yeah.
You just couldn't see it this way. And so, coach, some players see it from different ways. They see it from the side. They have to be on the court and be kind of have to walk through their plays. And this player in particular had to see it from behind. And so understanding that is all kind of important, or what I found to be important. I haven't had the opportunity to be a head coach yet, coach, but like when I'm in game and I'm drawing up here, this is what I think the opposing team, this is what the Celtics are going to run. Make sure we do this, or when you switch, do this. And so understanding how they take and learn that information and process it, I felt was important. And
Coach,
sorry, yep.
thank you for sharing that. It's a lot of insight.
No problem. And then in season versus off season, we talked about, this is the thing that's most obvious, I feel. There's a way to train in season versus there's a way to train off season. And I'll get into that now. So, we all have to keep our jobs, right? So there's always things you have to teach your players to help you win now. And so that to me is always the thing that's most important. How can you help your players do the things you need to do to win now? And so what are those things? It's the goals and culture of your head coach and team. And so I put team breakfast. It doesn't necessarily directly correlate, but there's something cool we do here in Philly. And so what I've learned, and something I learned from Coach Voigt in the past, is it's hard to get men to talk right in front of each other and be honest for some reason. And so, and to stand up in front of their peers and be vulnerable. And so what Coach Brown has kind of installed here in Philadelphia is we have, maybe call it monthly, we do a team breakfast where our players can choose any topic and of whatever, and kind of have their peers, their players and the coaching staff. We may invite some of our GM and our front office there, but it's not open to the public. It's not going to be on social media. And so there's a safe space to where they can talk about anything. And so the topics have gone from coffee to simulation theory to should NCAA players be paid, to any type of figure, to the anything, to Australia, to the Croatian War, the war in Croatia, Serbia, and Yugoslavia, and all that. And so it's gone from every type of topic, but more importantly, it's a way for young men to speak in front of their peers, not being judged, and on a topic that they know dearly. And so I think it's another way to help your team and our team develop this communication safely in front of each other. And wherever I go in the future, when I'm a head coach, I'm taking this because I think it's very important for our guys.
Excellent.
So the next thing I would say is 80-20, kind of what we do here, 80% in like the things that will directly help, 20% always learning new skills. And so in particular, I had a player a couple of years ago that really wanted to expand his range, his three-point range. He was a big guy, and coaching staff was all for it, but not necessarily right away in the games. because he wasn't shooting a great percentage at the time. But like I said before, that's his candy. That's his incentive to work hard. Is at the end we're shooting. Pick a number threes, and we're doing it from these spots, and we're doing it off the dribble, and big guys don't get a chance and opportunity to handle the ball, and so I always start stuff with ball handling drills, and it's always stuff to expand their game and their passing and their hands and so the 80-20 rule, in the 80% or the 80% of what we work on is stuff that's helping us now, and then 20% is looking at another player and picking things from players that I like. And so to the messaging and phone piece that we talked about earlier, Coach, in terms of sending players, if I'm scouting an opponent and I see Bam Adebayo do something and like, whoa, that I think could help one of my guys,
Mhm.
I'm taking that clip and I'm sending to them, hey, what about if we incorporate this? Let's work on this in our next workout.
Yeah.
And so I talked about the time and how that is hard in the NBA. Like there's no time to practice. We're either traveling. I felt like I've spent most of my time on a plane, on a bus, in a hotel, away from my family, and less of my time on the court with our guys. And so with these limited practice times, uh, I think we take for granted how good the players are, that we lose sight of the necessary fundamentals that they need every day. And so Coach Brown is great in terms of hitting a fundamental every day. And so when you're in these development sessions with your players, I feel it's vital to touch on a fundamental piece every single day. And that could be everything from form shooting to landing on 2 feet before you pass and pivot. That could be we talk heavy in the Sixers world, scraping it across your face before you make a move, and then sweeping it by your feet before you make a move, push passing, everything fundamental that players don't necessarily like, but are truly important to their game. And so I think I at least the most of my development sessions are on that, the fundamentals of anything. And
Coach John, how long are your development sessions?
at most 30 minutes. At most. I I just have found once you go past that, and the thing is, if they want more, I say, oh, well, let's play at the end. Because I feel the best way for the players to get better is to play and kind of incorporate. And so I feel like we've become, and I don't know where I stand on this, but ultimately I think playing is best for your guys to get better. We've become, I feel, a culture of just working out and 1-on-0 and skill sessions where I feel that there needs to be a point for your players to incorporate the skills they just learned in the session you did with your coach. And so if I go past the 30 minutes that I talked about, Doc, I'd go, well, let's play 1-on-1. And I'll play. And if Coach Voigt is on here, I don't know if he is, or like if he watched it, he like, you play? Because I had a bad back kind of the majority of the time. But I found that the more I can play with our guys, the more, and I hate to use this phrase, sweat equity, you hear that all the time. But like, I hate to use that, but it's the truth. Oh, you want to, and so I'll play 1-on-1 with our guys a lot. I'll play 2-on-2, 3-on-3. And I just feel like the more you play and they can go against the body with the things you've incorporated in terms of like these fundamentals, they get that moment a lot. And
Coach John, how often are your sessions? I know it's 30 minutes, but you do it like 3 times a week.
As often as it takes, and so as often as you can get the players to come in, as often as they want to be in the gym. How our team is structured, we have our practices, let's call it 10 o'clock. And so maybe let's call it 12 o'clock. And so our practices are 12 o'clock, maybe 2 hours prior, we have our vitamins, where we have maybe 30-minute clumps or however you want prior to practice to get your development sessions in. And that can be on every practice day. That can be on every game day. You can go 6 days a week. You can go, some players want to do 7, but we understand that you can't go every day and at the intensity that most coaches want. I mean, I'm, I try to be as enthusiastic as I can with the players, because if I come in and be like, all right, today we're going to do shots and some defensive slides, then that's the energy that they're going to reciprocate. And so I found in 82 games and the long season, I can't be as intense and have them go as intense as I want them to be. I have to know how they're feeling. Are they sick? What's going on with their family life? What did we just play? Did they just play 30 minutes last night? How's their body feel? Do you need to get treatment instead of, being on the floor? All these things kind of go into how many days we're going to train and how long we're going to train. Does that make sense?
Yes, Coach. Coach, I have another question.
Yeah.
How many, in order to build the rapport with these players, with your players, do you work with a certain number? Sort of like, another coach is in charge of another set of players. So maybe you work with 4 or maybe 5. How does that work under the structure of the Philadelphia 76ers?
Yeah. So it's unique. The NBA is very unique. There's not a lack of resources. And so you'll see from team to team, Coach Boehner was on, I saw in Indiana, they have a bunch of players. And Coach Townsend was with us. We had our own shooting coach. And we have a tremendous amount of coaches on the floor, on our staff, more than it's ever been, just because there's been this focus to player development. And in particular, to your question, to this kind of ratio of coach to player. And so I don't want to say I'm not this NBA lifer and I can't really speak about what it was prior to my time, but I've always heard older coaches that have more experienced coaches say, when I was in the NBA, I had 7 guys, or I was the only development guy. Or, for example, Coach Brown was the player development coach, director of player development when he was in San Antonio. And so he was in charge of this. And so think about it. He had almost every guy, but the assistants all had their hand in it. So to answer your question, it's probably 2 or 3 per coach. And what I found is, like, you don't have the bandwidth to do more than that if you want to do I shouldn't say you don't. But it's hard for me. I don't have the bandwidth to spend as much time as I want dedicating to the players and do it the right way on top of my responsibilities as an assistant coach. And so our front office, our development staff has done a tremendous job of bucketing up our quote unquote stables in terms of who is with what coaches with which player, what's the ratio, how many players can be with him, how many assistants, development coaches, video guys, helpers can dedicate to that one player, because instead of it being one coach and then you have 3 guys on the floor, sometimes you can, reverse it and have more coaches. And so it depends, but we try to make it 2 to 3 per coach.
Can you, or is it a secret who you work with or who you're assigned to? Or
secret?
You can share that information.
Look, I will go on the players that I've worked in the past.
All right.
It's not necessarily a secret. I'll work with the players that I've worked with in the past. How about that?
All right. Okay.
So,
cool.
Let's see. And so I've worked with, they're really all on this page. And so
all right.
Trevor Booker, Jaleel Okafor, Amir Johnson, in the past, Nerlens Noel, Robert Covington's not on this list. Boban, who's in this, Boban,
Boban.
yeah, Marjanovic, I've worked with him. And so there's a number of players, predominantly big, but I've trended towards like Robert Covington when our coach Lloyd Pierce we were going to Atlanta Hawks. He worked with Cove for the longest time. And so when Lloyd left, I kind of was working with Cove. And so I'm not just a big man coach, so to speak. And so, yeah. I'm playing a little coy there, a little bit intentionally, but yeah.
It's okay, Coach.
Ah.
Personally, I feel that in the NBA All-Star Weekend, they have the Skills Challenge. It's one of the events that I enjoy the most. And over the last couple of years, the big men have been winning the Skills Challenge, which is shines a very bright light on player development that it actually works.
Yeah, and I'm not that experienced in the NBA game, but really the first that I saw to do it, and probably I'm gonna be left out, was Dirk. Like Dirk changed the game with being 7 feet and can have that skill set. All the way now to, Kevin Durant won't say he's 7 foot, but he sure looks it. And so even Joel, Joe is 7 whatever, and he has guard skills. And so it's unbelievable how the game has kind of progressed, and it's, to use the word that is always positionless. And so it's really trending that way, and it's important to, I feel, not to limit your player in whatever they do, as long as you win, of course. Winning will always be number one, right? Like you coach to win, and so you don't want to, your 7-footer all dribbling the ball up. It's within reason. But Doc, you're exactly right. Like, it's skills. Doesn't matter what position you are; they're all important for every player.
All right.
I'll keep going. So within these development sessions, what loses, what is an afterthought, I should say, more often than not, is defense. And so no player development coach I've studied or gone to a clinic or watched a YouTube video ever talks about defense. You know what I mean? It's always skills. And because let's be honest, no player wants to work on defense, and because they see the highlights but shoot, we all saw The Last Dance, right? The Michael Jordan documentary. People forget he was an all defense, NBA defense player. And so I don't want to get into that too much, but like, it's important, especially since I'm a defensive coach, and now as an assistant, I primarily work defensively with Ime Udoka. We're in charge of our team's defense. And so I found that it's important for me to touch on that, because, if I work on it with them, when it comes to me doing the drilling in front of the team, I at least have that rapport with my guys to be like, oh man, we do this every day. And then if I need someone to demonstrate, here you go, come over here, and this is what I'm talking about. And so if it's a 30-minute workout, I like to be creative with how I sprinkle it in. Maybe it's a pick and roll component. And so if I'm working with a big, whatever coverage that we're talking about, drop, center field, whatever, they're into their coverage into a shot, or they're doing a defensive slide, or have to do some type of hand drill defensively we work on deflections a ton, into a ball handling move or something, so we talked about the creativity. It's lost, I feel, a lot in a lot of development sessions. And so however I can incorporate a defensive component in the development sessions, it's helped. And then lastly, I talked about how I wasn't a very good player, but I think the reason why I was actually able to make money as a professional player was because I was competitive and I was intense. And so all the sessions I feel like, Doc, we talked about how long are the sessions. Uh, they're short because I want them to be game speed. They're short because I want them to be intense. They're short because I want them to be competitive. And so I feel like their mind can only take so much in that lane that you can't take an hour of that. You'd be gassed. We have a game the next day. Or we got to hop on a flight. And so, and granted, there is a time and place for light shooting. But when we're working on something and when I'm trying to teach something, it's intense. And the tracking piece in terms of you're competing against something. If we're shooting, you got to go 7 out of 10. You got to, every front rim miss is a -1. Every back rim or whatever, something to where they're always competing against themselves or another player. Or a clock, 24-second shot clock. We got to make it, our game is 24 seconds. So I always try to incorporate 24-second shot clock in a lot of our workouts, whether it be some defensive drill for 24 seconds or some shooting drill for 24 seconds or some, shell drill for 24 seconds. And I always like to do it with contact to make it as game-like and as game-specific, you use props when you have to, when you don't have the people, but I'd rather use coaches on the floor versus contact with our guys always. And that could mean when you're ball handling, when you're trying to get open on a down screen, pin down, whatever, on a cross screen, they need to feel that contact for that to be realistic. You had something?
Coach John, you mentioned that there are times that you really have to feel, if the players up to giving 100% in practice, they may not be up to it. Have you ever had a situation wherein you had a session, but you could feel that they couldn't bring the entire 100%, the intensity that was required of the session? What do you do in those instances if they can't meet that criteria that you set?
Yeah, no, that's
The reason why,
sorry.
just to give you some context, the reason why I bring it up is there's a Pat Riley story that I remember reading. He had one practice. He was still with the Lakers at the time, and he had one practice. And he could feel like the team wasn't bringing it for that particular practice. So he said to the players, all of you line up at half court. If one of you hits a half court shot, we'll cancel practice. So Byron Scott goes up, he throws it up. Even before the ball goes through the hoop, everybody's running to get their bags and into their cars. So
there's nothing better than cutting practice early, right? We've all played. There's nothing better than the coach saying, "Oh, we're done," right? It's something it does to your psyche, and it almost wipes whatever is on your mind clean. And so, that happens quite often. It's just due to the time that we spend together, the time that in games, the number of games that we play, and he just might be sick of me today. That happens. It doesn't mean our relationship is or they might have something going on at home. What I find the best way is prior to us going on the floor and doing anything, I always spend, while they're stretching or while they're warming up, I might warm up with them and talk to them and be like, "What's up? Where you going? What'd you do last night? What'd you eat?" So I can kind of gauge. It's stuff you do with your students as a teacher. It's just, how are they preparing to learn, and are they prepared to learn? And so I feel like that little point prior to, they may not want to talk, and so I won't talk, or and so I'll just listen. And so I've become the best listener, because sometimes they just need you to listen. They may not have it today, and I feel like more experienced coaches tell me this all the time. You're not just a coach, you're a teacher, you're a father figure, you're a psychiatrist. You are all these things roped into one because it's whatever the players need that day out of you um, is what hat I wear, And so that was a long-winded answer to say I've cut practices sessions early, just like the Coach Scott story. You know what? Let's go. Let's do this. Let's stop. Let's play horse, or let's play a game. How do I make it fun? Me and you shoot free throws, and let's have a winner. I'm a terrible free throw shooter, so they always win. So that's a confidence builder for me. So it's one of the things. It's just like, be human. As much whatever I had written on my goal setting for that day to do with that player could all be thrown out the window depending on their mood. Now, if it happens every day, we got to have deeper conversations. But I've developed this relationship with this player that I feel that they feel comfortable enough to be like, I just don't have it today. And sometimes it's okay. And I cut sessions early. So it's yes, to answer your question.
It's refreshing to hear that there's a lot of flexibility. So thank you for sharing that
No
story.
problem. So one of my
Hello.
yes.
Hello. Hi.
Skywalker.
Good morning.
Good morning. Here's my son Miles.
Uh-huh.
Hi,
You're
Miles.
talking about Luke Skywalker?
He's talking about, what are you saying?
Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker.
Yes.
Oh,
He ran upstairs to
Doc
come-
Teddy will relate to that. You heard that,
You know,
Doc?
In the States today, it's off topic, but today is the 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back.
Is
for
it?
all the Star Wars fans out there? Yeah.
Doc Teddy's big.
I was telling my wife this morning. Today is the 40th anniversary of I Love You, and the answer is I know.
You know what? I didn't get into Star Wars until this year, believe it or not. I never watched one Star Wars movie, and so my wife and I were
Catching
binge
up.
watching. Yeah, and so
That's why your kids are talking about
he loves it.
that. Well, no spoilers. Tell them no spoilers. I won't spoil you guys.
And so yeah, I'm human just like them. I don't mind as a coach showing vulnerability. I feel like it makes them see you as human. And they're vulnerable. They show vulnerability to me, which helps with that reciprocation of not only learning but friendship. And so when they don't got it, they don't got it. And so the last piece in this is contest. And so not only a body, we want a body on guys that make them feel that physicality of our game, but that every shot they take is contested. Not only, if it's an outside shot, but at the rim. And so a lot of times that was me. If it was just me and a guy, it was just me, and I'll block it. Just, or I'll foul them. And then it's a lesson. Sorry. Hey, Miles, can you take your sister downstairs? This is all part of, so COVID, this is our new normal, right? And so my kids are in school right now, and so I'm homeschooling, and right now they're not doing their work, and so I apologize that they're up here.
All right, Coach.
Don't worry, Coach. Star
We all
Wars
can
is a good
relate.
topic.
Okay. I feel like I'm talking a lot. And so I apologize. So we talked about the end season of how we've trained, and then now the off season. And so it kind of goes with the 80-20 rule in reverse, right? Like it's now things that'll help us win later. And so all the skills that they wanted to work on and do now. And so I mentioned Boban, and it's fun. So I had the opportunity to work at the World Cup last year, and I saw two of the guys that I coached in China. And then when we were in Rio at the Olympics, I saw our then current player, Sergio Rodriguez, that played for Spain. So it's always fun to see guys that you have these relationships with. And so whenever our guys leave for the off season, we always give them a blueprint to their success for that summer. And so all the coaches have kind of in front office have kind of pointed to a direction that we feel they should go, what things that we think they can work on. And a lot of it's analytics based on their specific numbers for that given season, where we want to project to where they want to go and should go, and here are the areas we feel. So I talked about the resources the NBA has, and so a lot of teams do this. A lot of teams send their development coaches to wherever their players are, the market that they're in, and so that's a resource our players has. A lot of our players have trainers, personal trainers, and it's funny. I don't know if anyone's ever really brought it up in any of your sessions, but there's sometimes tension between these personal development trainers and the actual coaches for that team. I don't feel there needs to be tension if it's all towards helping the player. And so 8 months out of the year, they hear my voice. So why not hear a different voice? As long as we're all aligned in our goals, right? Like, you don't want your guy coming back and they're working on some spin move behind the back and like, and so like, as long as we're all working together towards a common goal, I feel like, why can't it work? And so it's just a different voice for them to hear. And I feel like that's needed for guys, especially if they feel they want it and they need it. And I spoke about national teams. I've seen the effect national teams has played on this in the season, on our guys. It's a long national teams it's a long process, but I love it because you play against the best competition, right? And so, and ultimately, I feel that the best way is to play. That's the best way. And I'll look at a guy that has impressed me the most over the last couple of years, Pascal Siakam, right? And so everyone's seen his improvement in the NBA over the last couple of years, and all summer I just saw him playing in like workouts in California or whatever. Like, and I think he came out in one of the interviews, I just played all summer long and tried to incorporate all these things I learned during last season, things I'm doing with a trainer, into this playing. And so I feel the best way for players to improve is just to play every day in the off season. So I encourage that. The last piece, and I'll shut up, is like learning. I don't want to say I was always like this, but I'm becoming this way. And it's because of my mentors and the people that I'm around. Coach Voigt is a lifelong learner. Coach Brett Brown is a curious lifelong learner. And so I've been very fortunate to be around coaches that kind of embody this statement and read, learn, podcasts, are just hoop junkies. I said in an interview, someone asked me, did you always love the game? I don't think I loved the game as a basketball player. I love the game as a coach now. I played the game because it was fun and I enjoyed my teammates and the relationships as a player, but I truly have grown to love, kind of talking about it. And I reference Coach Voigt a lot just because he's one of my good friends. But we can have sessions on the phone and we both get our juices flowing and just talk basketball for hours. And so, I like pick, and he doesn't claim to know it all. And I feel like the best coaches are like that. And in turn, that curiosity helps you with your players, because they know, oh, my guy, this coach doesn't know it all, or he's always trying to help me learn to get better. And I heard a quote in one other Zoom panel or coaches panel or podcast I was watching or on. Staying curious, is always going to keep you current, right? And that's like true in a lot of ways. And I don't think I saw that early on in my coaching career, but I think it's vital. It's like the most important thing, especially as our game is evolving. We've had coaches on here talking about the 3-out, 2-in offense, 4-round one, and then now you see a lot of offenses is 5-out offense. So like, you always, if you stay in the past, the game will pass you by. And so, man, during this COVID, and people always ask me, well, what have you learned? Well, what have you done? And there are a variety of resources out there in terms of what's on the FIBA website, and the NABC has stuff on their website. And Coach, your podcast, shoot, I found myself looking back, but to the answer I've given them is I've been present with my kids during this whole COVID. And so I felt like my kids, and I say this with no disrespect, are like my players. If I can help teach my children something, I know I can help teach, our players. And so they've helped me become a better coach. They helped me be more patient. I had a goal set for my son who's 6. He had to learn how to ride his bike without training wheels. He still doesn't know how to swim. Who knows if pools are going to open up here, and tie his shoes. And so goal setting, I've set goals for my son, just like his development coach. And so that's how I've learned during kind of this hiatus, and along the being on we've all been on these Zoom calls, we've all been on podcasts, and I've gone back and watched our games and studied a lot of our late game situations, our need stuff. I'm on the defensive side of the ball, so I don't want to just be known as a defensive coach. So I learn different end of the game plays. I'm still learning on what offenses I want to run. And I just been curious during this time, but it's starting with my kids. I ask a lot of questions. And mainly because I don't know. And this, like I said, this is only my 4th season in the NBA. And only my 9th season overall as a coach. And so I'm trying to get to year 20, Coach. And so I try to ask as many questions as I can, because I'll be the first to tell you I don't know it all. And so I think that's important. And the more you know, the more they know. I say that just because if I don't know it, let's figure it out together. And I alluded to it earlier. I watch a lot of games. And so the NBA League Pass or things provided, like whenever I'm not scouting, I think my wife, I'm so fortunate and blessed that my wife loves basketball, because
Filipino.
yeah, there's always basketball on. I'm always watching every game that's on that night, and just trying to. Sometimes I watch it as a fan, and sometimes I'm like, oh snap, they do this, and the Lakers do this, and the Clippers do this, and so how can I bring that to our guys? And so, yeah, that's my my story. I hope that wasn't too long.
No, that's all right. Of course, we've learned a lot. And Coach, just a follow up on that. you mentioned that you played before. You thought you're not that good enough, but obviously you played overseas and you played D League, so you're talented. You're just but as a coach now, do you think you would have been a better player if you would have been if you would have you play now, or you can coach now yourself? Like, let's
Absolutely.
just say, yeah. Let's just say,
Absolutely.
yeah, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
I think
Same
every
here,
coach
same here.
I think every coach feels that way.
Yeah,
Now, my body doesn't really feel that way.
Of
You know,
course,
my
yeah.
body, I don't know what kind of contract my body would get, but I can fake it. I can certainly fake it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think most of the coaches can relate to that. Like, sometimes I'll say like, I think I would have been a better player if I would have played now that I know the game more as a coach. So yeah, so that's just
Absolutely.
doctors. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
And like it's just it's those things like all the things that I try to instill in my players, I now have it as a coach that I didn't always have as a player. I didn't always set goals for myself as a player. Coaches try to do that for me, but you have, and if you want to do anything, you have to do it yourself, and it comes from within. And so you have a different drive as a coach because you have to find different ways to reach your guys. And like, I feel like, man, now I could do all these things and I could have a longer career. It's just I would take care of my body better, just because what it takes to sustain a long career as a player now.
All right. Doc, there's 7 questions before we let Coach go.
Coach, let's see. As a coach, how do you develop the skills and attitude of a hot-headed player?
Yeah. So every player I've coached has some point to be hot-headed, and some point to be almost unreachable. Uh, I think the skills that it takes to develop them is a know time and place when you can go up to them. So in game, the guy gets subbed out, right? He gets subbed out probably because some reason, right? He did something wrong. He missed some coverage, or he took a bad shot, or whatever, right? When they're in that moment of being hot-headed and they're letting off their steam and whatever, I've come to find that I can't always approach them that time. There's always that, like, you want to strike while their iron's hot. Like, you want to make sure you correct the mistakes as soon as it happens. I understand that, but like, it doesn't apply to almost every player. There are some players who are hot-headed. You can go up to them right away, but I say, like, understanding when you can teach and when you can find your teaching moments when they are hot-headed. Does that make sense? And so I found that, it goes back to the relationship. If I don't have a relationship with them, why would they listen to me in the first place? And on top of that, when they're mad. And so I know, and we've communicated to each other. I'm like, so when do you want, like, when you have these episodes or whatever of being upset, when's the best time for me to reach you? And then these are the things we talk about. I feel in terms of how can I connect with them during these moments.
Thanks, Coach. Manola's asking, Coach John, what is your view on Kai Soto's chances of becoming an NBA player? If you're familiar with Kai.
I'm familiar with him. I haven't studied him. I mean, he's obviously pretty good. Like, I just saw Coach V and I were talking last week about him. I have this. I usually work this basketball without borders camp that's presented during All-Star Weekend. And for the past, other than this year, I worked it for the 2 seasons prior, and I just missed my opportunity this year to work because my wife was pregnant, so I stayed back with her, and so I missed my opportunity to work with him. So I can't comment on his skill set and what he has, but I've heard that he has something, right? Like, and so enough for him to kind of bypass the college and go to the G League, which will be interesting to see his development there. But I can't wait to see him and maybe coach him at some point. But like, he obviously has something. So it'll be interesting to see how it grows.
Uh, Coach Lorenz is asking if it would be possible for him to get a copy of your presentation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, nothing I wrote is copyrighted. Nothing I wrote is made up by me. Uh, it's all things that I've learned from other coaches that I feel has helped me. But yeah, absolutely. Does he want my big head on all these slides? I don't know. And so, yeah, that's no problem.
Coach Ian, ask your questions to Coach Ian.
Hi, Coach. How are your working dynamics with Coach Brett Brown? What is his leadership style with his assistant coaches?
Coach Ian, great question. Coach Brown, I would say, is the most studied, curious. I'm trying to think of what other energetic, caring coach that I know, right? And so had the opportunity to work with him for 6 years. A normal day would look like this. A practice day, I'll call it that. And so in the mornings, we'll have, say we played the night before, we've all watched our game, we have our notes. We have probably a 2-hour meeting, hour and a half meeting prior to our practice time. And so we'll go over whatever we're going to work on that day. And he's great. He gives us the autonomy to do what we feel as long as it's aligned with what we're going to do. So he won't necessarily be like, we're doing this today, unless we had a terrible game or so our rim protection was bad. Okay, clearly we need to work on our rim protection today. But he listens more than he kind of dictates. And so I think he says a lot. Maybe I give out, let you guys have too much, but I think it helps us grow as coaches. He always comes with something he saw. He always gets our video guys to clip up every close game that happened the night prior, and we always talk about every close game. What will we do in those situations? He's always looking for what can we do better with our team. Always with the end goal of we have to win, obviously. But I've never been around a more curious coach that's always trying to learn on what different ways to learn to improve our team and our guys. Does that help, Coach Ian?
Yes, Coach. Thank you very much. I just have a follow-up question. How do you keep yourself constantly curious?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if I'm curious by nature, to be honest. So, and I'm not going to lie and say that I am. Some guys just have that curiosity in them. Like I feel like Coach Brown and Coach Voigt just have that. It's a skill that I have to work on myself, and so I do it with the things that I love. And so basketball is one of those things. And so I don't necessarily always love to watch podcasts and watch other coaches, but what I do I love watching basketball. And so, and I'm not an avid reader, as a lot of coaches are, and talk about reading all the time. But I feel like that's a very important skill to have because I think it's time. I don't have the time to read as much as others do with a 4 and a 6-year-old and a newborn on the way. That I just try to find the things I know I can do, and accomplish. It's one thing to set goals with your curiosity, and there's another thing to achieve them, right? And so I can have all these goals in the world of how I want to be curious and then never do any of them. And so I know that I love watching basketball, and I'll watch our old games. I'll watch other teams, and I learn a lot just by watching them. I'll learn a lot by just talking with my peers and asking questions. And believe it or not, this is actually my first time doing one of these, Coach V. I don't know if you knew that. And so thank you. This is one way I'm learning on how to convey my ideas, and I'll ask for feedback. That's how I kind of can stay curious, because uh, feedback and watching games and all these things help kind of like fuel that curiosity. And it's something I have to work at. I don't know what it's like for others, but I know like it's something that doesn't come natural.
Coach
All
John,
right,
I
thanks, Coach.
have a suggestion.
Thank
I have
you,
a,
Ian, for the question.
Thanks, Coach.
Coach, can you stop sharing so we can see
Yeah,
you
sorry.
better?
Yeah, my fault. Sorry about that.
There you go.
Here we go. Stop sharing. There we go.
There you go. So much handsome guy than the smaller.
This is my quarantine beard.
Uh-huh.
I have a
But
question for the reading, Coach John.
I'm sorry.
I have a suggestion for the reading. It can be daunting if it's the physical book. You can try an audio book,
Yes.
and then you get in like a chapter or a couple of minutes in. Eventually,
Yeah.
you get it done, and you'll knock off a couple of books, I think.
Yeah. What I found is I don't know, maybe it's difficult for me to read and study basketball, because I enjoy the game, right? And so maybe audiobooks will help. I enjoy the game a lot, that when I read, I want to read to learn something about another topic. You know what I mean? Like, and so it's just, I don't know, maybe it's that. Maybe I'm a visual learner. So maybe it's that. Like, I need to see things to learn them, and more than like, I guess I'm also seeing it this way and reading, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I, we all learn different ways, and I will definitely try that. I definitely will. Thank you for that suggestion.
all right. There's a couple more questions, and then, of course, Teddy, I know you're itching to ask your question. So there's three more questions.
Three more, Coach.
Yeah.
Rainer's asking, how do you overcome um,
The loss
how,
to the
how do you overcome the your loss to the Raptors last season? What are the ways or process um, that you guys have done to overcome it as a team and to come back stronger this season? Thank you.
Let me make sure I heard you right. So the loss last season,
Right.
is that what he's asking? Yeah.
yes. The Kawhi Leonard
Yeah.
five bounce.
Oh, thank you for being specific. I appreciate that.
All right.
Who's that? I could.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, go.
It's first of all, the losses in the NBA, it's hard, right? Like, there's so many games. It hurts, of course, right? But there's so many games that there's always work to be done, right? That particular loss hurt me the most in my short career in the NBA, because we're so close. And I had probably the most impact I've had coaching with then Jim O'Brien with our defense. And so it's hard, it's really hard. And we just had, I think they're past the anniversary of that shot. And so all over every social media account had Kawhi shooting that shot, which it still hurts. But like, that's the thing that fuels you as a coach. Those are the moments that fuel you to become a better coach. And so how we've done with our staff is, in our off season, we really just like dove into that whole series. We dove into that last play. We dove into what we would do differently. We dove into what coverage would we have done earlier for the game not to be that close. We studied what coverages, what we do different, moving forward. What didn't we do in that game that we might have done versus Kawhi? And, Kawhi was shooting something like 70, 80% from the mid range, which we call quote unquote a bad shot in today's NBA. So it's like maybe he just was having an otherworldly series,
Mm-hmm.
who knows? And so we dissected every inch of that series in the off season and have kind of built it toward this season in the way we're playing this year. And it'll be interesting. I don't know what's going to happen with our season in terms of whether it'll go on or what, but I think we're all wanting to see it complete. I think right now, kind of our journey has been kind of incomplete. So for everyone. But to answer your question, I think about it almost every day. And the first time we went to Toronto, it was hard. The first time I walked past that spot on the floor, it was the first time I was in the locker room, because you feel all the emotions, and we all have, as coaches, have those emotions, which is what fuel you to be better.
All right. Who among the 76ers players do you think has the potential to be a coach after his playing career?
Wow. Wow, that's a great question. Tobias Harris
Mhm.
stands out the most because he has this relational piece. Like, he's probably our most relational guy on our team. He has this way of connecting with his teammates that our other guys don't quite possess. Or I don't want to say that, but he has it more than others. And so he's a very high basketball IQ player. And so I just feel, number one, he has this NBA pedigree, right? Like, they're all going to listen to him because he's played in the NBA. He is humble and has this kind of humility to him, and he can just connect with our guys. And to me, that's step one.
Mhm.
You can always learn the ins and outs of coaching as you go. I faked it from the beginning, right? Like, when my first year in the working with Coach Voigt in Bakersfield, I didn't know anything. And like I always say, I still don't know much, but or I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't know anything. But like, what I mean is, like, as long as you have the relationship piece and as long as you can connect, you can teach. You can always learn what you want to teach.
Mhm.
So Tobias.
All right. Um, what is it like working with Okafor? Do you think he can be where he needs to be defensively to be a bigger contributor in the league based on his work ethic and receptiveness to coaching? Very long question, Mr. Emerito.
Very long question, but very good one. I love Ja. I've had the fortune of coaching with him. I think it was 2 seasons. Um, Everyone knows how talented he is as a scorer,
Mhm.
as a big man, and even he knew there were things he needed to work on defensively. Uh, I think it depends on what team he's on and what his role on that team. Do I think he can be that defensively like Joel? I don't think he'll ever be that way. But I think because he's just not 7'3", have long arms, and is this really athletic specimen. But I do think that he has made tremendous strides in his body, and he takes his health serious. He's now vegan, so that was a large part of his game and his ability to move on the floor, and just he's receptive to being better and getting better. And I think he's done a lot with that down in New Orleans, and it's all about the role he plays on that team and what they need him to be. So long story, yes, I think he made strides with us in Philly, and then that's coaching, right? Like, figuring out the skill set of what your players can and cannot do, and put them in the coverages that they can and cannot do. So, maybe you have to be creative with how you have your coverages and when he's on the floor. For example, like Denver and Jokic, right? He's not this athletic big who's going to be this big time rim protector. So Coach Malone and their staff, I give them all the credit in the world. And that's why you watch teams. They have him showing, they have him hedging out and then recovering, and they have the weak side or the backside cover for him. So like, it's all about what coverages you put your players in to help them be as successful as they can.
Thank you, Coach. Doc, I know you're aching to ask your question.
My scouted question, it seems.
Yes.
Everybody knows about it. Coach John, could you kindly give us, in your opinion, what are the 5 qualities a basketball coach should possess in order to be successful? Thank you.
Thank you. It's like, it's hard. It's like, you just asked me who are my 5 favorite artists that I like to listen to, or, you know what I mean? Like, and so in no particular order, I think it's some of the things that I talked about. And so the ability to tell the truth, the ability to tell the truth and be honest with your players, to me is very important. The ability to be relational is also important, to not only be relational with your players, but with your staff that you work with every day. Because what you find is we're all possessive by human nature, right? Like, you always want to be, oh, this is my guy, this is my player. You want to claim success but it's not just you. And we all have a hand in helping our players improve. And so developing a relationship with your staff and player is a huge piece, I think, in coaching. Showing that being a good listener. I talked about that. I've done a lot of talking on this podcast, but I'm a better listener than I am a talker. I've found the skill to absorb and take in information and use it at the right time. This curiosity and lifelong learning ability is kind of this newly acquired skill I've had in my coaching career, but I found it to be important. And because you have to know what you're talking about. Like, are you believable as a coach? Like, and so like, you have to know what you're talking about. It's okay to have presence, but are you believable? And do you know what you're talking about? And my 5th, man, I don't know, be human, I guess. Be a human being, like, be vulnerable. I think that there are a lot of amazing coaches in our game, a lot. And I didn't invent anything that I teach. And so the thing I feel that I'm the best at with our players and with our coaching staff is that I'm a better friend. I'm a better teammate. I'm a better whatever than I am a coach. And I mean, I'm not going to downplay myself. I'm a great coach. I'm building to be a really good coach, and I know what I'm talking about most of the time. But like, I am an even better teammate and person.
Thanks,
Excellent.
I hope that answered, and I hope that I
Of
did
course.
It did.
Oh,
Well rounded
well,
up.
yeah, well, Coach would like to thank you again for spending your time with us, and of course, our attendees appreciate your willingness to share your information and to be able to help, developing players and developing coaches as well that are listening and that are also on our YouTube channels. And Coach, like to give you this moment, just parting words or anything.
Yeah. So you know, I'm not able to do what I do and provide and be a great coach without my family. And so the first slide you saw in my presentation was my family. And so my wife's right here, you know, she's my number one supporter. Uh, I don't know if she wants to be on camera.
Hello.
But I found it to be like,
Bye.
Puso.
it-
Puso.
in order for me to like be the best coach I can be, I have to be the best husband and father that I can be. And people didn't sign on to hear me say that, but I think it's the truth for me. I have to have some type of balance. And if I don't have that balance in my life, I can't perform as a coach. And so that's my parting words. It's not the basketball quote thing that people want to hear, but it's what's helped me in my career.
Excellent. Excellent.
So thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Coach B. Thank you, Dr. Teddy. I appreciate it. Like I said, this was my first.
First of many, for sure.
And so
First of many. And let me know if you want to present again. And we're always welcome. And of course, we've learned a lot. And thank you so much, Coach.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Coach.
it.
Right, and see you soon in the Philippines.
Yes. See you soon.
Hopefully. All right.
All right.
Okay,
Enjoy
Carl. Thank you. We have another session in 20 minutes with an Italian coach, Coach Francesco Nani. So see you again, attendees, and at 10 p.m. Coach, thank you so much, Coach John.
Thank
Dr.
you.
D, see you again. And Ian, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Good night. Good night, Coach. Or good
night.
morning to you.
Night. Good morning.
Bye.